The greatest adventure is what lies ahead. Today and tomorrow are yet to be said.
Hello everyone, No One of Consequence here, back again with a new video. This is episode 60 in a series which recounts my ongoing Dungeons & Dragons campaign, which is now in its 10th year. So as always, spoiler alert, in this video I will be revealing details found in this adventure module. And as a reminder, this is the current status of the adventuring party. Thorold, the magic user, is still missing, and Obrak, the dwarf, is still turned to stone. And also, Varys' guard dog, Spuds Mackenzie, is still missing as well. So where we left off last time, after Aramis had temporarily lost his mind and began attacking the other characters, once they got over that, the characters decided they'd had enough adventuring for one day, so they returned to their hideout cave to rest and heal. So the next day, they returned to the fire giant lair, and instead of going directly back to that crystal room where Aramis had gone crazy, the characters discovered a previously unnoticed side passage near where they had fought the Drow on the previous day. So they followed it, and it led to a narrow flight of stairs leading back up to the second level. So they climbed those stairs, and then they suddenly stumbled into a room hiding some were-rats. And you can see that one there in the light, but there's also a few more pointed out down at the bottom edge of the screenshot. So the characters fought those. The were-rats were soon defeated, and once that was done, the characters noticed a small tunnel leading from that room heading west, and it was clearly meant for the were-rats to use while in their giant rat form. And only Gorbadoc was small enough to squeeze through that tunnel, so inside he went. And it didn't go very far before it opened up into another room. And once he got in there, Gorbadoc quickly realized that he was once again in the fire giant's jailer room, which is where the characters had fought some other were-rats a few days before. So Gorb returned back through the tunnel, and when he got back to the rest of the characters, he found them inspecting a couple of small chests, which and Garrett was checking them for traps and all that. And since were-rats are thieves and hoarders, the characters did find some interesting valuables in those chests, including a few magic items. So the characters then, after that, they went back down to the third level, and they went back to the southern edge of that crystal room, but they were careful not to actually re-enter it. Instead, they turned to the south and into the unexplored passage that they had discovered on the previous day. So that passage continued to twist and turn for a while and eventually headed west. Then the character suddenly arrived at a chamber containing several Drow female. One, seated in the center of the room, was clearly a high-level priestess, and then she was surrounded by what was obviously her personal guard. However, instead of attacking the characters, the Drow priestess actually welcomed the characters and invited them to sit down. The Drow priestess introduced herself as Nediline, and she said she had information that would be of interest to the characters. She also said that she had a proposition that would be of benefit to all of them. So the characters cautiously accepted her invitation to sit down, and Varys even lit up some of his elf root and offered to share it with her as a gesture of goodwill. So what followed then was a very lengthy conversation in which a lot of information was given to the characters, but it was necessary for them in order to fill in the gaps in their knowledge of what exactly is going on here and what they would need to do next to progress in this campaign. So I've made several slides to summarize what the characters learned. That Nedeline started by telling the characters more about the Drow and their society. She explained that they're a matriarchal society, and female priests, like herself, occupy the top leadership roles. She also said that the Drow society is organized into various houses, and some of these houses are more powerful than others, but they all compete amongst themselves to gain dominance over the others. Nedline explained that there are currently two different factions of the Drow houses. There's the rebel houses, who are worshipping the elder elemental god, and then there are the traditional houses who worship the demon queen Loth. She said the two factions are hostile to one another, but they are currently not willing to risk open warfare. She explained that Eclavdra, the leader of the Elder Elemental God faction, wants to acquire the elemental keys that the characters possess, which they had gotten from the Temple of Elemental Evil. She wants them because without them she cannot free the Elder Elemental God and conquer the Loth faction. And Nedeline, who is a senior leader of the Loth faction, obviously does not want Eclavdra to succeed in this plan. Nedeline had been sent here to gather information on Eclavdra and determine how far along she is in her plans. And Eclavdra knows that Nedeline is here, but has ignored her for the time being. Again, the Drow, at least at this time, don't want to risk open fighting. Nedeline has figured out that the elemental keys that the characters have can be used to either free the Elder Elemental God from his prison or to banish him forever. Nedeline admits that she doesn't know the details of doing either one of these, but she believes that the answers can be found within Eclavdra's House Islesserve compound, which is located in the Drow's home city. The Drow city, which they call Errol-High Sinlu, can be reached via the tunnels leading from the fire giant lair. However, she said that it's a long trip, more than 50 miles underground, and would be fraught with danger. Nedeline says if the characters want to go there and pursue this quest, that their best chance would be to pose as traders going to do business at Errol-High Sinlu. She says that commerce continually takes place there because commodities can be difficult to come by in the Underdark, and so therefore trading caravans are common. Nedeline says that Errol-High Sinlu is mostly tolerant of other races being there, as long as they have the proper credentials and are not causing trouble. But having said that, the city is still a very chaotic and potentially dangerous place. The Drow consider other races to be inferior to themselves and frequently use them as slave labor. when the characters asked why she was helping them, Nedeline explained that she wants to thwart Eclavder's plan, but cannot risk doing so openly. She said if civil war among the Drow is to be avoided, then she must work behind the scenes, using proxies, such as the characters, to achieve their shared goals. Nedeline also told the characters that Thorol and Spuds McKenzie are being held prisoner by Eclavdra in a large cavern divided by a lava river, which lies further along the passageway through these tunnels. She said that Eclavdra has the elemental key that Thorol was carrying, and her plan is to bargain his life in exchange for the other 3 keys if the characters are not defeated in some other way first. Nedeline said that the unseen threat in the nearby Crystal Cave is a trio of mind flayers. She says apparently they're here just to gather information because they have not actually attacked any of the Drow passing through that area. And she went on to say that the characters could either wait for the mind flayers to leave, just go in and try to fight them, or perhaps try to bribe them into leaving the characters alone. Nedeline said that she and her warriors are now going to return to the Drow homeland so she can report all these latest developments to her superiors. The characters asked Nedeline if she could help them with Obrak being turned to stone, and she said that she was previously made aware of the presence of the Gorgon in these caves, and so she had come here with a few magic concoctions which can be used to restore a being turned to stone. And she said that she would, when they left, she would leave one of these behind for the characters to utilize on Obrak when they return. Nedeline concluded by saying that Varys' elf root would be highly prized by the Drow. And she suggested that if the characters decide to pose as merchants, then they should bring plenty of elf root to sell at the Drow city. And this would also help to reinforce their cover story as being merchants who have only gone there to trade. So, armed with all that information, the characters returned to the hideout cave, and they selected a few choice pieces of jewelry that they had taken from the dragon's hoard. They realized they could not progress any further without first dealing with the mind flayers, so they decided to try the bribery approach. So after they had sorted out a few pieces of particularly valuable jewelry, Varys cast a floating disc spell, and they loaded Obrak onto it. They returned to Nedeline's chamber and found that she and her followers had already packed up and left. They also found the concoction that Nedeline had promised to leave behind, and they used it to restore Obrak back to flesh. So next, Gorbadoc volunteered to go to the mind flayers alone, figuring that he would be viewed by them as the least threatening. So the other characters agreed, and Gorbadoc went into the Crystal Cave, and he soon found the mind flayers lurking at the back of that chamber. He approached them, holding forth the jewelry bribe and claiming that he had information that the mind flayers would want to know. And this great shot, it's dark because Gorb wasn't using any torch light, just his infravision, but you can see the mind flayers pointed out. Since Gorbatok is so small, the mind flayers reasoned that his brain would hardly make a snack for one of them, let alone all three. So they allowed him to approach. Gorb quickly explained why the characters were here, and he also told them everything they had learned regarding the Drow, and the Mind Flayers were able to confirm all this using their innate powers of ESP. So Gorbatok just closed by saying that the characters didn't want any trouble with the Mind Flayers. They only wished to pass through this cavern so they could fight the Drow beyond and rescue their friend. And the Mind Flayers, since they now had enough information to take back to their own people, they accepted Gorb's jewelry bribe and departed. Gorbatok returned to the rest of the party and told them everything that had taken place with the Mind Flayers. So, with the way forward now clear, the characters passed through the crystal cavern without any more trouble, and as you can see here, they moved on into a tunnel beyond. So, just as Nedeling had described, the characters found a large cavern bisected by a river of lava. There were Drow sentries posted on the far side, or where the side where the characters are. They were watching for the characters, and as soon as they saw them approaching, those Drow fled across a rope bridge, and then they cut it behind them. So now that they were safe on the far side, the Drow began firing their poison crossbow bolts at the characters. So Niobe immediately cast a blade barrier spell to help disrupt their formation and take some of them out. But they still needed to get to the opposite side of the lava river. So Aramis was still carrying the rainbow slide reward item that he had gotten from the St. Patrick's Day one shot that year. So he used that to get himself across the river of lava. You can see him suddenly appears on the far side of the lava. And he was quickly followed by Obrak, pointed out there in the upper corner. Obrak was carrying a potion of flying, and he drank that so he could just fly across the river. And you can see Obrak pointed out there at the top. Once he got across, he dropped a snowball in hell Christmas reward item that he had onto some Drow directly underneath him. You can see the explosion there. Meanwhile, Gorbatok was returning the Drow's crossbow fire with missile fire of his own, and he scored a critical hit. You can see pointed out there. And meanwhile, Aramis got lucky in that one of the Drow that he was fighting rolled a fumble and tripped and fell down. And incredibly enough, Gorbatok scored another critical hit using his bow, and you can see the result of that one pointed out. And Garrett was also using missile fire as well against a Drow. He just hadn't scored any critical hits. But I just want to point out he wasn't just standing there. He was actually firing as well. However, with all that going on, they still needed more characters on the far side of the lava river. So Gorbatok, who still had his rainbow slide, gave it to Varys, who then told Niobe to climb onto the floating disc, which was still following him around. Garrett activated the rainbow slide and targeted a spot on the far side near where Aramis was. And then he, his floating disc, and Niobe, along for the ride, all appeared on the far side to start helping Aramis. Meanwhile, Obrak, again pointed out there at the top of the screenshot, had landed on the ground and was finishing off the drow that had only been wounded by his snowball in hell that he had dropped on them. But to complicate matters, suddenly these elemental fire creatures called salamanders climbed up out of the lava and began attacking the characters from behind. You can see them pointed out. And also, some more bad news. Garrett was hit by one of the poisoned drow crossbow bolts, and he failed his saving throw, and so he suddenly dropped to the ground unconscious. And seeing that, Gorbatok activated his ring of invisibility and ducked back around a corner there at the upper edge of the screenshot. Now, by this time, Obrak, who's pointed out in the center of the screenshot, finally spotted Thorol and Spuds McKenzie in the back corner of this chamber. And you can see them pointed out. Thorol was glued to the wall. You may remember from the last video when one of the drow were firing these blobs of glue-like substance at the characters. So apparently that stuff had been used to basically just glue Thorol to the wall so he could not escape. And then Spuds McKenzie was there as well, but he was just chained to the wall. But anyway, Obrak saw them up there and began fighting his way in that direction. Obrak also recognized the Klavdra, the Hydro priestess that Nedeline had told them about, but also who they had seen on the upper level trying to sacrifice Aramis to the Elder Elemental God. You remember that from a few videos back. And then finally, Obrak could see the elemental gem that Thorol had been carrying just openly sitting on a table there, pointed out. So back on the other side of the lava river, Gorbatok, who was still invisible at this point, activated a Witch's Broom Halloween reward item that he had recently received. And he climbed onto it and, grabbing hold of Garrett, prepared to fly them both across the lava river. Here, someone, I don't remember who it was, threw a snowball in hell at Klavdra and her group of minions, and you can see that explosion pointed out there in the upper corner of this screenshot. And then also someone, probably it was Aramis, deployed a snow globe of defense Christmas reward item. And looking at the markers on him, it looks like he may have drank a potion of speed as well. So suddenly at this point, a chain of darkness spells suddenly appeared, which had been generated by the drow to blind the characters and keep them from seeing their movements. Gorbatok, who is now flying across the lava river on the Witch's Broom, since he was up in the air above the darkness, he could see Obrak back in that corner trying to free Thorol. So Gorbatok just let go of Garrett to fall to the ground because Garrett was actually wearing a ring of feather falling, and Gordon knew that Garrett would not actually take any damage from the fall, so he decided to just drop him into the darkness where he should be hidden from everyone, and both the characters, but also the Drow, and would hopefully be safe from being attacked in any way. So, like I say, Gorbadoc let Garrett float to the ground, and started flying his broom over towards Obrak. Back at the south end of this battle, where most of the other characters were, they saw a group of Drow rushing out of the darkness spell towards them, and you can see there's Aramis, Niobe, and Varys down there. But those characters, instead of trying to fight the Drow, they instead took off running themselves. They circled around that line of darkness spells and ran to the north, back towards Obrak. And the plan was to have everyone rally up around Thorol and protect him until he could be freed, and basically just get all the characters back together. Obrak, in trying to free Thorol from the glue pinning him to the wall, managed to get his warhammer stuck to it. So, try as much as he could, he could not free it from the glue. So now he didn't even have his weapon. Meanwhile, everything had suddenly gotten quiet, so the characters began spreading out to see if the Drow had actually fled. But however, Varys stayed behind, and he began working on trying to break the chain that was restraining Spuds Mackenzie. And Obrak, who was still under the effects of the potion of flying, and Gorbadoc, who still had a few rounds remaining on his witch's broom, both of them flew to the south end of the chamber where they had previously seen those Drow running, and they were able to confirm that all of the remaining Drow had apparently fled the area entirely. So they all gathered back up around where Thorol was, and eventually one of the characters struck upon the idea of trying to use alcohol to dissolve the glue that was pinning Thorol to the wall. And there was plenty of wine to be found in this opulent Drow chamber. So the characters poured some of that over the glue that was pinning Thorol, and this plan actually succeeded. The alcohol dissolved the glue, and he was finally Thorol was finally free and was able to move around again. So eventually, the darkness spells expired, and they could see everything again, and Garrett's sleep poison wore off, so he was back up and moving again. The characters searched the chamber for valuables, and it was only then that they remembered the elemental key that had been sitting on the table, but they realized it was gone. So apparently in their escape, Eclavdra had managed to retrieve it and take it with her. But on the plus side, Thorol's other belongings had simply been tossed into a corner when he was captured and brought down here. So he was able to get all that stuff back, including his main thing he was worried about was a spell book, but it was still there with his other things, so he got that back. So the characters used the magic teleportation chain from the Hill Giant fort. They used that to return to the Hill Giant location, but that was as far as they could go using magic, and so they had to travel overland to get back to the town of Lorish. And of course, they carried as much of the loot as they could manage. By the time they arrived back in town, the year had almost come to an end, and winter had set in. And I just copied and dropped everybody here back in town, and you can see all the loot that they brought back with them scattered around there on the ground. As I've previously mentioned, I used the world of Greyhawk as a setting, and on the Greyhawk calendar, the end of the year is marked by a celebration called Need Fest. And that was just about to kick off, so Gorbadoc decided to throw a street party to celebrate both the holiday and the character's triumphant return. So he went around town purchasing the service of various vendors and arranged to have this party take place outside the inn where they're staying. The only thing, when Gorbadoc told the other characters that he was doing all this, he neglected to mention that he had dipped into the group funds that everyone has access to pay for everything, instead of using his personal shares of the loot. So anyway, with the party underway, the characters, you can see them scattered around there, mingled with the locals to enjoy the celebration. And also you can see Niobe down there at the bottom corner in front of the inn, playing with her dog Sir Cavan in the inn's courtyard. Alright, well, that's all I have for now. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button. As always, leave a comment. Let me know what you think. I reply to every comment. If you haven't yet subscribed to the channel, if you can, share the video. And anything you can do to help support the channel, I appreciate it. Thanks again. Bye for now.
The greatest adventure is what lies